quiet evening, the kind that carries an eerie calm, too perfect to trust. The streetlights flickered outside a modest suburban home where two best friends laughed over old memories. Their bond, at least to the world, was unbreakable. They grew up together, shared secrets, celebrated birthdays, and cried through heartbreaks. They were inseparable, or so it seemed. But behind those smiles lay something far darker. One of them harbored secret, a wound that never healed, a jealousy that fermented quietly over the years. While the world saw two sisters by heart, one saw a rival, a shadow that refused to move. That night, the mask of friendship began to crack. Welcome to Crime Chronicles Confidential, where truth is stranger than fiction and trust is a dangerous game. Today's story is not about strangers or enemies. It's about betrayal from the one you thought would protect you. It's about friendship that turned fatal. Can you recognize the moment love turns to resentment? When laughter becomes a weapon. When the closest bond becomes your greatest threat. This isn't just a story, it's a mirror. A chilling reminder that even the warmest smile may hide the coldest intent. It was just past 11 p.m. on a cool Thursday night. The neighborhood was cloaked in silence, broken only by the occasional rustling of leaves and the soft hum of distant traffic. Most homes had already gone dark, their residents fast asleep, wrapped in the comfort of routine and safety. But inside one particular house, a two-story brick home nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac, something unusual was about to happen. Emily had said goodnight to her parents hours earlier. She wasn't the kind of girl to sneak out or cause trouble. In fact, she was known for being responsible, the kind of daughter every parent trusted. That night, she had dinner with her family, helped her younger brother with homework, and even texted her best friend Maya goodnight around 10:15 p.m. It was an ordinary evening in every way. But by morning, Emily was gone. Her bed was made. Her window was shut. Her phone was on her desk, fully charged. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, nothing out of place, except for the haunting emptiness of her room. Her shoes were by the door, her favorite jacket still hanging on the hook. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Her parents only realized something was wrong when her alarm kept ringing the next morning. She didn't come down for breakfast. She didn't answer when they called her name. Panic crept in slowly. First confusion, then fear. They checked every room, every closet, every corner of the house. Nothing. By 7:45 a.m., they called the police. The neighborhood woke to the sound of sirens and hushed murmurs. A missing girl. No sign of where she'd gone. No witnesses. No clues. It was as if the night had swallowed her whole, silently, invisibly. The police questioned the family, combed through security footage from nearby homes, and scoured the area with search dogs. But there were no footprints, no trail, no screams were heard, no door was opened, not even the faintest sound. But someone knew something, and the truth, buried beneath years of trust and shared laughter, was about to begin unraveling. When the news of Emily's disappearance spread through the school the next morning, the reaction was swift and overwhelming. Students huddled in anxious clusters, whispering theories, scrolling through her photos, refreshing her social media profiles like something might change, like she'd suddenly post, "I'm okay." But nothing came, only silence. The teachers tried to keep the atmosphere calm, but it was impossible. Emily wasn't just another student. She was the kind of person everyone knew, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she made people feel seen. She remembered birthdays. She brought extra snacks. She helped with homework without keeping score. So when her absence became public, her friends were called in first. The counselors gathered her close circle into a small room, a space that suddenly felt like it was shrinking. Maya sat there, eyes wide and red, her hands trembling around a half-used tissue. She kept saying, "This doesn't make sense." Emily wouldn't just disappear. Her voice cracked mid-sentence more than once. Another friend, Zoe, bit her lip and stared at the floor. She was fine yesterday. We were planning our weekend. She said she wanted to go hiking. But among them, one face stood out, Lena, Emily's so-called best friend, the one who knew her the longest, the one who claimed to love her like a sister. Lena cried too, tears that rolled perfectly down her cheeks, mascara smudging just enough to look authentic. But there was something else. She didn't look sad. She looked trapped. While everyone spoke in bursts of grief and confusion, Lena was quiet. Too quiet. She avoided direct eye contact. Her fingers clenched the edge of the chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. And when the school counselor gently asked her, "When was the last time you spoke to Emily?" Lena blinked, then hesitated. Just for a second. Just long enough to notice. "She texted me good night. Around 10, she said finally, voice soft. But Maya looked over sharply. "No, she texted me. At 10:15. A small pause filled the room like a crack in a frozen lake. Not loud, but ominous. Something didn't add up. The officers at the scene took notes, but they were trained to notice things others missed. And Lena, despite her controlled sadness, couldn't hide one thing. Her hands were trembling, not from grief, but from fear. Fear of what? Guilt? Or was she afraid the truth would find her? Because beneath the surface of her tears, there was a flicker of something else. Something colder. Something rehearsed. By the second day, the investigation had moved from concern to urgency. The local police had brought in a digital forensics team to analyze Emily's phone records, text messages, social media activity, and GPS history. If she had left on her own, there would be clues. And if someone had taken her, there would be even more. Her phone hadn't left her house, but her data told a different story. The first piece of interest was the call log. Emily hadn't made many calls that day, just 2, one to her mom in the afternoon, confirming she'd be home for dinner. The second was at 10:12 p.m., exactly 3 minutes before her last known text message. That call lasted only 42 seconds. It was to Lena. Investigators flagged it immediately. When Lena had spoken to police earlier, she mentioned only a text, not a call. A small omission, but significant. Why would she hide that detail? They turned next to the messaging history. The chat between Emily and Lena stretched back years, filled with memories, late-night venting, inside jokes. But the most recent exchange was odd. Emily had messaged Lena that evening saying, "I need to talk to you. Something's not right." Lena never responded in the thread. Instead, minutes later, that brief phone call happened. No more messages after that. No voice notes. No replies. Then came the GPS data, the final breadcrumb. Emily's phone remained connected to the home Wi-Fi all night, which suggested she hadn't left with it. But her smartwatch, which had its own location data, told a different story. At 10:20 p.m., it briefly pinged off a nearby tower, logging a location barely 2 blocks away from her house, and directly in front of Lena's street. That signal lasted only 2 minutes, then vanished. Investigators pulled up security footage from homes along the route. One camera caught a blurry glimpse of a figure walking, alone, in the direction of Lena's house around 10:17 p.m. The image was grainy, but the hoodie and shoes looked eerily similar to what Emily was wearing that day. Why would Emily leave her home that late without her phone? Why head toward Lena's house unannounced? And not tell anyone else? Unless she trusted Lena enough to meet in secret. Unless she didn't know she was walking into something far more dangerous. When questioned again, Lena hesitated. I don't remember talking to her. I was half asleep, she claimed. But the evidence was closing in, and her story was starting to unravel. Because the truth was, Emily did leave her house that night, and her destination wasn't a random place. It was Lena's street, the last known location of a girl who never came back. As the investigation deepened, detectives began expanding their search beyond just Emily's immediate circle. They weren't just looking for what happened that night. They were trying to understand what led up to it. Because disappearances like this rarely happen without a build-up. There are always cracks in the foundation, warnings hidden beneath routine smiles, and fractures in relationships that only reveal themselves under the weight of tragedy. They began speaking with extended family, neighbors, former teachers, anyone who had watched Emily grow up. Most describe her as warm, helpful, and sincere. But a pattern started to form when her relationships from the past were put under scrutiny. Again and again, one name kept resurfacing. Lena. At first, It seemed like typical teenage friction, minor arguments, falling outs, reconciliations. But as investigators dug deeper, they found something darker, a history of competition, jealousy, and subtle emotional manipulation that had been present for years, but masked under the pretense of friendship. One former classmate recalled a time in middle school when Emily was chosen for a leadership role in a school project. Lena stopped talking to her for weeks, the classmate said. She made it seem like she was hurt, but really, she was just angry that Emily was chosen over her. A neighbor recounted a strange incident from a summer barbecue, where Emily had brought over a new friend. Lena was polite on the surface, the neighbor said, but the minute Emily went inside, her whole expression changed. She looked furious. There were social media patterns, too. Likes withdrawn, comments deleted, subtle jabs and captions, inside jokes twisted into tools of exclusion. Lena always maintained a position of closeness with Emily, but beneath it was a thread of possessiveness, like she didn't want Emily to belong to anyone else. But the most telling account came from Emily's older cousin, who had grown increasingly concerned over the last year. Emily confided in me once, she said. She told me Lena made her feel like she was constantly walking on eggshells, that every good thing that happened to her, a better grade, a compliment from a teacher, a new friend, turned into a problem with Lena. That resentment wasn't one-sided. Lena's own messages, retrieved from a cloud backup, revealed diary-like rants, voice memos to herself, and even unsent messages where she accused Emily of being fake, of stealing attention, of always getting everything handed to her. One recording was especially chilling. In it, Lena whispered into her phone late at night, "I made her, I shaped her, and now she thinks she can outshine me? She thinks she can leave me behind? No, she doesn't get to walk away." That recording was dated just 3 nights before Emily disappeared. For investigators, the conclusion was becoming clearer. This wasn't just a friendship gone sour. This was a storm that had been brewing for years, a silent war masked by shared selfies and birthday wishes. Lena's envy had deep roots, and it had started long before Emily ever realized she was in danger. One face, one name, again and again. Lena. Emily and Lena had known each other since the 1st grade. Their friendship was the kind that everyone admired. 2 little girls holding hands in the schoolyard, growing up side by side, finishing each other's sentences. For years, they were inseparable. Birthdays were shared, sleepovers were frequent, and their families grew close, often referring to them as like sisters. But as the girls matured, so did their individual identities. And slowly, the balance began to shift. Emily blossomed into a quiet leader, graceful, intelligent, effortlessly kind. She didn't seek attention, but it found her anyway. Teachers praised her. Classmates looked up to her. She was chosen for school plays, academic competitions, leadership roles. Everything she touched seemed to shine. Lena, on the other hand, was different. She was smart too, but in a quieter, more intense way. She worked hard, pushed herself, tried to keep up, but no matter what she did, Emily always seemed to be a step ahead, and everyone noticed. At first, Lena smiled through it. She clapped for Emily's awards. She took photos with her at school events. But something inside her had started to rot. Each of Emily's successes, no matter how small, felt like a slap, a reminder of her own insecurities, a spotlight shining directly on everything she felt she lacked. That invisible tension grew heavier with time. When Emily was elected vice president of the student council, Lena congratulated her, then spent the entire evening locked in her room, crying. When Emily was offered a summer internship at a local publishing house, Lena smiled and said, "That's amazing," then deleted her own application the next day. The final blow came when Emily was invited to speak at a national youth conference. It was a big deal, covered in local news, praised by teachers. Even Lena's own parents spoke highly of it at dinner. That night, Lena didn't sleep. She paced her room, replaying every moment, every compliment Emily received, every cheer in her honor. It wasn't just jealousy anymore. It was rage wrapped in silence. Because Lena didn't just envy Emily, she resented her. She felt like she had built Emily's success, that she had been the stepping stone, the constant support, the shadow that made Emily's light seem brighter. And yet, she got none of the credit. No applause, no recognition, just silence. But Lena's kind of jealousy wasn't loud. It didn't scream or lash out. It simmered. It brewed over time, poisoning her thoughts, her emotions, her logic. She told herself she was a victim, that Emily wasn't innocent, that she stole opportunities, manipulated people, pretended to be humble while collecting praise like trophies. And when Emily, unaware of the storm brewing, began pulling slightly away, making new friends, exploring new paths, Lena didn't see it as growth. She saw it as betrayal. The girl she once called her sister had now become her rival. And the silent wound that Lena carried, the wound of being left behind, of never feeling enough, turned into something much darker. That envy, that quiet, buried hatred, didn't just fester. It transformed into obsession, into control, into something deadly. It wasn't found right away. In fact, no one even knew it existed. It wasn't until investigators revisited Emily's room for a second, more thorough sweep, this time with behavioral analysts, that they noticed something strange about her bookshelf. A hardcover novel, seemingly untouched for years, was sticking out just slightly, as if it had been pulled forward and then forgotten. When one officer removed the book, it revealed a small gap behind the shelf panel. And hidden inside that narrow space was a plain, leather-bound diary, its edges worn, its pages thick and slightly curled with age and use. There was no name on the cover, no decorative pattern, just a single wordless object. But the moment it was opened, the weight of its contents was undeniable. The first page began innocently, "For the things I can't say out loud." What followed was a slow descent into a world no one had seen before. Not her friends, not her family, not even her closest confidants. Page after page, Emily had poured out her private thoughts, her fears, her doubts. The handwriting began neat, even poetic in parts, but grew more frantic and fragmented as the entries progressed. And at the center of nearly every entry was Lena. Emily wrote about moments that seemed minor at the time, subtle jabs, passive-aggressive comments, shifting tones in conversations. She questioned whether she was being paranoid, whether it was all in her head. But the entries grew darker. She says, "I'm her best friend, but I feel like I'm in a competition I never entered. Sometimes I think she hates me, and I don't know why. Then she hugs me and says I'm imagining things. Every time something good happens to me, she finds a way to make me feel guilty for it. I've started having nightmares about her watching me, smiling, not in a kind way, in a way that makes my stomach twist." There were specific incidents described, times when Lena had isolated her from friends under the guise of loyalty, when she had spread half-truths about Emily to undermine her confidence, when she had apologized only to repeat the same cold behaviors days later. But the most chilling entry came just 5 days before Emily disappeared. "I don't feel safe around her anymore. I think she's pretending. I think she wants to hurt me, and I don't know how to stop it. If anything happens to me, please look at her first. I'm scared to say this out loud, but I need someone to know." That single paragraph hit like a thunderclap. Suddenly, everything changed. This wasn't just a missing persons case anymore. This was prelude to something far more sinister. Emily hadn't just disappeared. She had feared it. She had sensed it. She had predicted the danger that no one else saw. The diary was immediately secured as critical evidence. Investigators confronted Lena with its existence. Her reaction was telling. She didn't ask what was in it. She didn't deny it. She went silent, her jaw clenched, her breathing shallow. The carefully built mask of grief and innocence cracked for first time, because the truth was no longer hidden. Emily had written her own warning, and now the world would finally hear it. It was late evening, just hours before Emily vanished. The air was crisp with the soft chill of early spring, and the sky had turned a deep, quiet blue. The streetlights had begun to glow, casting long shadows on the pavement. Several neighbors remembered seeing Emily walking alone just after 10 p.m., wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. Her steps were quick but hesitant, as if she were uncertain about something or someone. She didn't have her phone. That in itself was unusual. Emily never left the house without it. But there she was, walking toward one place, Lena's street. A retired couple who lived 2 houses down told investigators. We saw her pass by the front of our house. We didn't think much of it at the time. She waved politely like she always did. But now we wish we'd stopped her. Another resident, a college student who often worked late shifts, recalled something strange. She stopped near the corner and stood there for a few seconds, just staring down the road. Then she pulled up her hood and kept walking. I got this weird feeling, like she didn't want to be seen. That was the last confirmed sighting of Emily, alive. The security camera on Lena's front porch caught her arrival. The footage wasn't crystal clear, but it showed enough. Emily approaching the door, pausing, hesitating, then knocking. Lena answered. She stepped outside briefly, looked around, then pulled Emily inside. The timestamp, 10:22 p.m. After that, nothing. No more footage. No trace of Emily ever leaving. The house went dark shortly after 11 p.m. No strange noises were reported. No signs of a struggle. Just silence. An unsettling, deliberate kind of silence. When Lena was questioned initially, she claimed she hadn't seen Emily that night, just exchanged a few texts earlier in the evening. But when investigators confronted her with the security footage, her story shifted. "Oh, I forgot," she said. "Yes, she came by for a few minutes. We just talked. She left after that. I didn't think it mattered." But it did matter. Because no one, not a single neighbor, not a passing car, not a single motion-activated camera on the entire block, ever saw Emily leave that house. It was as if she stepped into the one place she trusted and disappeared within its walls. Lena's demeanor during the second round of questioning had also changed. The calm, composed exterior had cracks now. Her answers were shorter. Her voice trembled. Her eyes avoided contact. When pressed about what they talked about, she couldn't provide specifics. "I don't remember. It was nothing serious." But to Emily, it was serious enough to leave her home without her phone, without alerting anyone, and walk into the night. The weight of the diary entries now loomed even heavier. Emily had written that she feared Lena, that she felt something was going to happen. And now, all signs pointed to that night, that meeting, as the moment everything changed. Friend or foe, companion or predator. That final door Emily walked through was supposed to belong to a friend. But what waited on the other side was something far more dangerous. For days into the investigation, just as public attention began to intensify and pressure on the local police department mounted, a critical breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source. A motion-triggered CCTV camera installed on a garage across the street from Lena's house. The homeowner, an elderly man named Mr. Hartley, hadn't initially checked his footage. It was only after officers conducted a door-to-door follow-up sweep that he remembered the camera had been active that night. The footage was grainy but intact, and what it captured changed everything. At exactly 10:22 p.m., the footage showed Emily walking up to Lena's front door. She stood there for a moment, glanced over her shoulder, as if uncertain or possibly nervous, and then knocked. Within seconds, Lena opened the door, stepped out, looked both ways, then ushered Emily inside. Nothing seemed alarming at first, until what happened next. Roughly 45 minutes later, at 11:07 p.m., the camera activated again. This time, it recorded something chilling. Lena emerged from her back door, alone. She was dressed differently now, no longer in the sweatshirt she wore when Emily arrived. She was wearing dark clothes, gloves, and carrying a large duffel bag over her shoulder. Her movements were quick, deliberate. She looked around multiple times before stepping off the back porch and disappearing into the shadows behind her backyard, the direction of the nearby woods. Investigators were stunned, not just by the footage, but by the expression on Lena's face. It wasn't panic. It wasn't grief. It was calm, cold, controlled. They rewound the tape, watched it again. This wasn't someone searching for a lost friend. This was someone hiding something. Further footage showed her returning nearly 20 minutes later without the bag. Police immediately secured a search warrant and began combing the wooded area behind Lena's house. It didn't take long. Just under a thicket of branches, partially buried beneath a loose pile of leaves and dirt, they discovered the bag. Inside, Emily's sweatshirt, her bracelet, and strands of her hair tangled in the fabric. No blood, no body, but enough to confirm the worst. She never left Lena's house alive. When investigators confronted Lena with the footage, she froze. For the first time since Emily disappeared, she didn't have a prepared answer. Her hands shook. Her eyes dropped to the floor. The silence in the room was suffocating, because now there was no more doubt. Emily had walked into that house alive, and Lena had walked out alone, under cover of darkness, with the truth zipped inside a bag. The camera had captured what words could no longer deny, a friendship that ended in betrayal, and a truth that refused to stay buried. The courthouse was packed. Journalists crowded the steps, cameras flashing, microphones extended, all waiting to capture the story that had seized the town. A missing girl, a grieving family, and a best friend accused of knowing more than she admitted. The buzz was electric, the tension unbearable. Everyone had seen the headlines. Everyone had watched the footage. Now they wanted answers. Lena entered the courtroom flanked by her attorney, wearing a simple black dress and a blank expression. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her posture rigid. But when her eyes fell upon Emily's parents sitting in the front row, eyes hollow, clinging to one another, a flicker of something crossed her face. Guilt? Fear? Or just the weight of being caught? The prosecution opened with force. They laid out the timeline piece by piece. The call logs, the text messages, the GPS pings from Emily's smartwatch, the eyewitness accounts, the diary entries, the damning CCTV footage, and finally, the contents of the duffel bag. Each detail was meticulously presented, leaving little room for ambiguity. This was not a random tragedy, the prosecutor stated. This was a result of years of festering envy, masked as friendship. Emily trusted Lena, and that trust cost her everything. Then it was Lena's turn to speak. When she took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. All eyes locked onto her. Her voice trembled as she began. I didn't hurt Emily. I loved her. She was my best friend. Her eyes welled with tears. Her hands shook slightly. She described their bond, growing up together, sharing secrets, supporting each other through everything. She insisted she had nothing to do with Emily's disappearance, that yes, she had seen her that night, but they had only talked. According to Lena, Emily left after 20 minutes, upset but alive. I don't know what happened to her after that, she whispered. I wish I did. But under cross-examination, her story began to crack. Why had she told the police about the visit the first time? Why did she change her clothes late at night? Why did she lie about the call? What about the diary, the footage, the bag? Her answers were inconsistent, her timeline vague. Her tears, once seen as sympathetic, now seemed rehearsed. She's not crying for Emily, the prosecutor later said. She's crying because she got caught. Expert witnesses were brought in, behavioral analysts, digital forensic specialists, even a psychologist who reviewed Lena's old messages and recordings. They painted a picture of a girl whose internal jealousy had slowly transformed into calculated resentment. They called it covert aggression, hidden behind smiles and affection, culminating in a moment of irreversible violence. The defense tried to argue it was circumstantial, that no body had been found, that without direct physical evidence linking Lena to an act of violence, it couldn't be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But the jury didn't need a body. They had her silence. They had the footage. They had the diary. And they had a motive, not just jealousy, but possession. Lena hadn't just lost a friend. She felt abandoned, forgotten, replaced. And in her twisted mind, if she couldn't keep Emily, no one could. When the verdict was read, Lena sat motionless, guilty. The courtroom erupted in muffled sobs, some from Emily's family, some even from those who had once called Lena a friend. And as she was led away in handcuffs, her tearful cries echoed down the hallway. I didn't do anything. But no one believed her anymore, because in the court of truth, tears are not enough to wash away blood. And drama, no matter how well performed, can't rewrite the evidence. The courtroom had emptied. The cameras were gone. The reporters had moved on to other headlines, and the legal proceedings, though complete, had left something unresolved. Justice, perhaps, had been delivered by the law, But for Emily's mother, there was no verdict, no sentence, no judgment that could fill the aching silence left behind. Outside the courthouse, surrounded by a few remaining journalists and mourners, she stood still, a grieving mother in a simple coat, clutching her daughter's photograph like a lifeline. Her face, pale and drawn, was the face of someone who had not slept properly in weeks. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of everything she had endured. The sleepless nights, the endless waiting, the unbearable not knowing. And then, as the cameras rolled quietly, one reporter gently asked, "Is there anything you'd like to say?" She looked straight into the lens, eyes glassy but clear. "I just want to know why." Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more pain than any scream ever could. Why would someone she trusted, someone she loved like a sister, why would she hurt her? My daughter never wanted to harm anyone. She helped people. She forgave easily. She believed in friendship, maybe too much. She walked into that house thinking she was safe, thinking she was loved. She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. I watched them grow up together. I fed her. I let her into my home. I never imagined that the friend I once called family would be the reason my daughter never came home. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her voice did not break. It was steady, like a mother who had cried too long to cry any louder. You can lock her away. You can say justice is served. But what do I do with this silence? With this empty chair at our dinner table? With this room I can't walk into because it still smells like her shampoo? What do I do with birthdays she'll never see, with dreams she'll never live? She held up Emily's photo again. She was more than a headline, more than a case. She was mine. And all I have left now is a question that haunts me every night when I close my eyes. Her voice cracked. Finally, not from grief, but from the unbearable injustice of it all. Why did she kill her? What did my daughter ever do to deserve that? The reporter standing nearest turned away, unable to hold back his own tears. In that moment, there was no need for more words, no analysis, no speculation, because sometimes the most devastating truth is not in what's known, but in what can never be understood. And the mother's voice, raw, unfiltered, and echoing with a kind of grief that defies language, became the closing note to a story that should never have been written. A mother's plea, a cry for justice, and a question left hanging in the air, unanswered forever. As the investigation delved deeper into Lena's past behavior and digital footprints, a disturbing truth began to surface. Emily's death wasn't a result of a sudden argument, a moment of rage, or a tragic misunderstanding. It was something far more chilling. It was planned. Piece by piece, the evidence painted a picture not of impulsive violence, but a methodical calculation. Investigators obtained a warrant to search Lena's laptop, tablet, and multiple cloud backups. What they found there unraveled the final layer of the mystery and exposed the dark timeline of a friendship twisted beyond recognition. The earliest trace was a private journal entry on Lena's tablet dated nearly 8 months before Emily's disappearance. It read, "She thinks she's so perfect, so adored. I wonder what people would say if they really knew her. Maybe it's time they saw the truth." It seemed harmless at first, just venting, perhaps, but it didn't stop there. Over the next few months, Lena's entries became increasingly obsessive. She had created folders named after Emily on multiple devices. Inside them were dozens of screenshots of Emily's social media posts, text conversations, even school achievements. She had compiled notes detailing Emily's routines, favorite places, passwords, and, most disturbingly, a list titled, "What She'd Miss If She Were Gone." It included things like graduation, college acceptance letter, her little brother's birthday, mom's Sunday dinners. It wasn't a hit list. It was a psychological exercise, a slow rehearsal of what life would be like without Emily in it. Then came the internet searches. Forensics teams recovered browser history from Lena's incognito sessions. The results were haunting. How to erase GPS data from smartwatch. How long after death is a body untraceable? How to fake a text conversation. What does it feel like to kill someone you love? Some of the searches were made weeks before Emily vanished. Others just hours before. Even more damning was a deleted note recovered from Lena's phone. It appeared to be a drafted message, never sent. You made me invisible. Now I'll show them who you really are. But perhaps the most terrifying discovery was a map, hand-drawn in Lena's private notebook. It outlined the woods behind her house, with specific markings, distances, and a large X drawn exactly where the duffel bag was later found. There was no more room for doubt. This wasn't spontaneous. This was premeditated. Friends and teachers were shocked when confronted with the findings. Many admitted they'd seen glimpses of jealousy in Lena over the years, but no one, not a single person, believed it could lead to this. But the truth was, Lena had been unraveling silently, slowly, while still laughing at parties, posting filtered selfies with Emily, hugging her in public, and smiling through clenched teeth. She didn't lash out in the heat of the moment. She waited, she watched, and she executed a plan she had nurtured in the darkest corners of her mind for months. A plan to destroy the one person she couldn't outshine, couldn't control, and ultimately couldn't let go. It wasn't an accident. It was the endgame of a friendship poisoned by obsession. And it started long before anyone ever knew Emily was in danger. After the avalanche of digital evidence, hidden diaries, and undeniable footage, Lena's defense team shifted its final strategy: mental instability. They claimed she had been suffering from severe psychological distress, exacerbated by years of academic pressure, family expectations, social anxiety, and emotional neglect. They painted her as a fractured mind, a girl spiraling silently in a world that praised perfection and punished imperfection. In court, her attorneys argued that Lena was not a monster. She was a victim of untreated trauma, that the act she committed, while tragic, was a product of a nervous breakdown, not conscious evil. They claimed she had blacked out, that she couldn't remember what happened, that she had been consumed by confusion, fear, and mental collapse. To support their narrative, they produced Lena's therapy notes from sessions she had attended months earlier. The notes mentioned generalized anxiety, low self-esteem, and feelings of being overshadowed. The defense claimed these were signs of a slow mental unraveling, and that in the fog of that emotional chaos, she lost control. But the prosecution wasn't convinced, and neither were the court-appointed forensic psychologists brought in to evaluate her. They spent weeks with Lena, observing her responses, analyzing her behavior, reviewing her online activity, and conducting a full psychological profile. What they found stood in stark contrast to the defense's claims. Their report was cold and clear. There is no evidence of psychosis, hallucinations, delusions, or cognitive impairment that would suggest a break from reality. The subject demonstrates a high level of awareness, calculated decision-making, and preserved emotional regulation. The crime, based on all gathered data, was premeditated, controlled, and executed with clear intent. In other words, Lena knew exactly what she was doing. The psychologist pointed to the deliberate steps she had taken: the planning, the manipulation of evidence, the concealment of the body, the feigned innocence in interviews, the detailed digital trails and lists she left behind. This wasn't the chaos of an unwell mind. This was ego, a festering, inflamed ego that couldn't bear to be second best, that couldn't tolerate being forgotten, that saw Emily's success not as a friend's triumph, but as a personal insult. Lena hadn't snapped in a moment of mental confusion. She had simmered for months. In sessions, psychologists noted how she avoided accountability, often shifting blame, deflecting, and even expressing subtle indignation when questioned about Emily's accomplishments. Her language revealed more about her motives than her defense team realized. She had everything, Lena said once, in a calm tone. People loved her. It's like she didn't even have to try. That wasn't the voice of someone lost in mental illness. That was the voice of someone consumed by envy and driven by ego, someone who felt entitled to be the center, and when that spotlight shifted, chose to darken it forever. The court rejected the insanity plea. The truth had become undeniable. Lena wasn't mentally broken. She was emotionally calculated. And in the end, it wasn't depression or disorder that drove her. It was something far colder. The fire of ego, fanned slowly, deliberately, until it burned everything in its path. To the outside world, Lena was the picture of grace. Her social media profiles were a curated gallery of soft smiles, pastel filters, uplifting quotes, and picture-perfect moments. She posted selfies with captions like, choose kindness, and real queens fix each other's crowns. On birthdays, she wrote long, emotional tributes to friends, especially Emily, calling her my soul sister and the one who knows me best. Their photos together had hundreds of likes, dozens of heart emojis, and comments like best duo ever and friendship goals. But behind the glow of filtered pictures and staged smiles was a completely different person. As investigators dug into Lena's online activity, not the public posts, but the private messages, deleted drafts, anonymous accounts, and locked folders, they uncovered the extent of her carefully maintained double life. Lena had created an alternate Instagram account under a fake name, followed only by a handful of strangers and untraceable accounts. Here, she posted cryptic messages, dark quotes, art of broken mirrors, captions like, "They'll never see it coming," and "the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows." This account followed hate pages, consumed content on manipulation psychology, and even commented on true crime forums with disturbing admiration for women who had committed acts of betrayal. Meanwhile, in private group chats, she often subtly mocked Emily, using inside jokes to disguise bitterness, sharing unflattering photos, twisting her words out of context, and expressing veiled frustration masked as sarcasm. One message to a close circle read, "If she gets one more award, I swear I'm going to scream. I'm so tired of clapping for her success, like I'm her personal cheerleader." Another, "People think she's perfect, but I know the real her. Fake smiles and all." To her followers, Lena was empathetic and supportive, always the first to comment on someone's achievement, always offering virtual hugs and encouragement. But to those she let closest behind the curtain, her tone changed. She was sharp, critical, competitive. She didn't want Emily gone because she hated her. She wanted her gone because Emily reminded her of everything she could never be. The duality was frightening in its precision. She weaponized perception, used social media not just to craft an image, but to mask motive. So when Emily vanished, Lena immediately took to Instagram, posting tearful tributes, old photos, and pleas for her safe return. "Come home, Em. I miss you. Please be okay," she wrote, paired with a crying emoji and a photo of the two of them laughing at a school dance. The post went viral. People shared it, commented, sympathized. No one suspected that the same hands typing those heartfelt words were the ones that had hidden the evidence, that the same face crying for a friend had watched her die. It was a masterclass in manipulation, a chilling reminder of how carefully people can craft an identity online while hiding something monstrous underneath. Lena wasn't just hiding the truth from the world. She had built a stage and played the role of grieving friends so perfectly. Even Emily's own family had believed her at first. But eventually, every mask slips, and when it did, the world saw not a victim, but a predator disguised in likes, filters, and false compassion. An angel on the screen, a hunter in the dark. It happened quietly, away from the courtroom, away from a media frenzy, and long after the headlines had begun to fade. But for investigators, it was a moment they had been waiting for. A breakthrough that didn't come from forensics or digital evidence, but from conscience. Her name was Sarah, a mutual friend of both Emily and Lena. She had been part of their group for years, though never as close to either of them as they were to each other. In photos, she was often the one on the edge of the frame, smiling politely. She had testified earlier during the trial, giving standard answers. Yes, they were close. No, I never saw anything strange. They seemed like sisters. But the truth was, Sarah had seen everything. And one night, weeks after Lena's conviction, she walked into the police station alone, asking to speak to the lead detective. Her hands were shaking. Her voice, barely above a whisper, carried the weight of fear, guilt, and relief. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I should have told you earlier. I should have told someone. But I was scared. I didn't know what she was capable of." Sarah sat down, pulled out a small envelope from her coat, and placed it on the table. Inside were printouts of old messages, screenshots she had saved but never shared. Conversations with Lena. Conversations about Emily. "She used to vent to me," Sarah confessed. "At first, it was small things. Complaints. Normal jealousy. But then it got darker. She'd say Emily was stealing her life, that everyone only cared about her, that she felt invisible. I thought she was just being dramatic. We were teenagers. We all said dumb things. But then Lena began talking about how to teach Emily a lesson. Not physically, not at first. Just ideas. Spreading rumors, embarrassing her, isolating her. Sarah said she never took it seriously until Lena showed her something that chilled her to the bone. One day, she showed me this list on her phone. She called it the Reset Plan. It had Emily's schedule, the places she walked alone, the route she took to school. She joked about starting over. I asked her what that meant, and she just smiled. That smile. Sarah looked up, her voice shaking. That's when I knew. This wasn't just teenage angst. She was planning something. She wanted to tell someone. She really did. But Lena had a way of making you feel like she was always watching. She would hint at secrets, threaten to expose personal things, remind Sarah how quickly things could get ugly if someone crossed her. She was manipulative, charming on the outside, but inside, I don't even know what to call it. She made you feel like you owed her silence. Sarah tried to pull away from a friendship, but Lena always pulled her back in. She'd guilt her, flatter her, frighten her. And Sarah, like so many others, stayed quiet. Until now. I should have warned Emily, she said, wiping tears from her face. She trusted me. She thought I had her back. But I froze. And now she's gone. The detectives didn't scold her. They didn't press. They simply listened. Because sometimes guilt becomes its own sentence. And Sarah would carry hers for a lifetime. But her confession helped answer one of the last unanswered questions. Was Lena truly alone in her descent? The answer was no. Others saw the signs. Others felt the shift. But they looked away. And one of them, finally, had the courage to say what everyone else had buried. Yes, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know it would go this far. And in that admission, the silence finally cracked. Too late for Emily, but just in time for the truth. The courtroom was silent as the jury filed in, each face set with the gravity of what was about to be spoken. After weeks of testimony, mountains of evidence, emotional breakdowns, and shocking revelations, the moment had finally come. The judge's expression was somber. The bailiff stood motionless. On one side of the room sat Emily's grieving parents, eyes rimmed with exhaustion and sorrow. On the other, Lena, pale, still, her fingers tightly interlocked in her lap. Everyone held their breath. The foreperson rose. We, the jury, find the defendant, Lena Rose Carter, guilty of second-degree murder. Gasps broke the silence. Some wept softly. Others simply closed their eyes, as if finally exhaling after holding their breath for far too long. Emily's mother clutched her husband's arm and lowered her head. Her shoulders trembled, not in triumph, but in quiet devastation. There was no celebration, only the hollow feeling of a justice that comes too late to save the one you loved. Lena didn't cry. She didn't plead. She sat still, blinking slowly as if the weight of the word guilty had not yet reached her. Her lawyer placed a hand on her shoulder, but she didn't flinch. The judge delivered the sentence. 25 years to life in prison, with no possibility of parole before 20 years. A heavy silence followed the announcement. But even in that verdict, even with a legally binding punishment, a question hung in the air, unspoken but deeply felt by everyone present. Was this truly justice? Emily was gone. A bright, kind, promising young woman erased not by fate or accident, but by the calculated hand of someone she called a friend. No verdict could undo that. No prison sentence could fill the empty room in her parents' home, or the void left in the lives of those who loved her. Some believed justice had been served, that Lena, manipulative and cold, had been held accountable for her actions, that she would spend decades behind bars, not just for taking a life, but for betraying the very trust that made the act so unthinkable. But others weren't so sure. Was it justice or just punishment? Because true justice would mean Emily coming home. It would mean she'd graduate, go to college, live out her dreams, laugh again, love again. It would mean her mother wouldn't wake up every night hearing her daughter's voice in the dark. It would mean Lena had never smiled while hiding her hatred. And for many, the pain of the truth outweighed the satisfaction of the verdict. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked Emily's father how he felt. He paused for a long time before answering. "I'm grateful the court saw the truth," he said. "But there's no justice in burying your child. There's only survival." The camera lights dimmed. The reporters packed up. But the story didn't end with the gavel. It remained in the hearts of those who watched, a lingering ache, a hard lesson. And now, for those who've heard every word, seen every betrayal, followed every twist, the question is no longer what the court decided. It's what you believe. Was this justice, or simply the only kind of justice this broken world can offer? You decide. The trial was over. The cameras were gone. The courthouse was empty. Lena had been convicted. The sentence had been passed, and the world had begun to move on. But for Emily's family, time had not restarted. Her bedroom remained untouched. Every book still in place, her favorite sweater still draped over the chair, and her perfume still faint in the air. It had become a shrine of memories, a space suspended in the last moments of who she was. It was during one of those quiet, grieving afternoons that Emily's mother found it. She had been sorting through her daughter's desk drawers, not to clean or discard, but simply feel close to her again, to hold on to the last pieces of her. Inside a faded envelope, tucked behind a stack of notebooks, she found a small folded letter, unsealed, addressed to no one. It wasn't dated. The handwriting was unmistakably Emily's, neat, careful, with the occasional flourish at the end of the line. The ink was slightly smudged, as if she had hesitated while writing. But the words stopped her mother's breath. If you're reading this, something has already happened. Maybe not yet, maybe no one knows it, but I can feel it coming. There's a heaviness that follows me now, like a shadow that's no longer behind me, but beside me, watching my every move. I've tried to tell myself it's just stress, or paranoia, or growing up, but it's more than that. It's her, Lena. I don't know when things changed between us. I look back at old pictures, and I see two girls who were like sisters. But now, I look in her eyes and I see something else. Something cold. Something I can't name. It's like she's waiting for me to slip, to fall, so she can be the one to catch me or let me break. Sometimes I wonder if I'm overthinking it. But then she says something, just a look, a phrase, and it makes my skin crawl. And still I keep pretending. I keep smiling. Because I don't want to believe someone I love could ever hate me this much. But if something happens to me, if I go missing, or if one day I don't come back, please don't forget this letter. Don't ignore it. Don't write it off as drama. Look at her. Look closely. Because I think she's planning something. And I don't want my story to end in silence. When Emily's mother finished reading, she collapsed onto the floor, clutching the letter to her chest, sobbing not just from grief, but from the unbearable reality that her daughter had seen it coming, and no one had heard her. The letter was handed over to the police and later entered into the permanent case file, not as evidence, but as a voice, the final voice of a girl who had been silenced too soon. It became more than just a message. It became a testament, a heartbreaking echo of fear, love, and foresight from a young soul who sensed the storm before it arrived. And in her last written words, she did what so many victims never get the chance to do. She told the truth. And even in death, she refused to be forgotten. What is friendship really? Is it shared laughter, inside jokes, and years of memories? Is it trust without question, or simply the comfort of knowing someone always has your back? We grow up believing that friendship is sacred, that the people we choose to love outside of family will protect us, stand by us, and never harm us. But Emily's story asks a far more unsettling question. Do we ever truly know the people we call our closest friends? She trusted Lena. She shared secrets with her, celebrated birthdays with her, cried on her shoulder, and defended her when others doubted her. From the outside, theirs was a bond most people envied. But behind that perfect picture was a different reality, one where jealousy grew in silence, and hatred wore the mask of loyalty. It makes you wonder how many smiles that we see are genuine, how many warm hugs are wrapped around cold intentions, How many so-called friends are keeping score, not memories? This story isn't just about one tragedy. It's a mirror. And now we ask you, the viewer, is friendship truly safe? Or have we become too comfortable, too trusting, too blind to the warning signs we don't want to see? Think of your own circle. Think of those you trust the most. Now ask yourself, would you bet your life on them? Emily did, and she never got the chance to ask these questions. But you can. Emily's story is not just a tragedy. It's a lesson, one written in heartbreak, silence, and the final pages of a diary no one was meant to read. She trusted too deeply. She believed too purely. And she ignored the subtle signs, the gut feelings, the moments that whispered something isn't right. Because that's what we're taught to do, to give the benefit of the doubt, to believe that those who smile with us, who laugh beside us, who say, "I'm your best friend," could never be anything but sincere. But trust, true trust, is not blind. It's earned, tested, and sometimes, when we least expect it, betrayed. This story teaches us that friendship, like any relationship, must be seen clearly. That love and loyalty are not just about words and memories. They're about patterns, actions, and how someone makes you feel when no one else is watching. It teaches us that not every smile is honest. Not every hug is safe. Not every friend is a friend. So let this story be your warning and your wake-up call. Don't close your eyes. Don't silence your instincts. Don't trade your safety for someone else's approval. Because sometimes behind the sweetest face lies the sharpest knife. Keep your eyes open. Always. Now that you've heard Emily's story, her life, her trust, her final moments, we turn to you. What did this story make you feel? Did it shake something inside you? Did it make you question the people around you? Did it remind you of a moment, a friend, a silence that suddenly feels louder? Your voice matters. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what stood out, what broke your heart, what made you think twice. And if this story moved you, even a little, share it. Because stories like this aren't just tales from distant towns. They're warnings. They're echoes. They're real. And next time, it could be closer than you think. Subscribe to Crime Chronicles Confidential for more stories that reveal the darkest sides of trust, betrayal, and human nature. Because the next story we tell might be from your city, your school, your street. Stay awake, stay aware, and never stop asking, who can you really trust?